Too sweet. I'm often reminded of the scene from Jurassic Park, the original one, when Jeff Goldblum's character, Ian Malcolm, says, "Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should." How often do we deal with the things in our daily lives with that same sort of mentality? I mean, think about all of the Disney live-action remakes right now. Do we really need them? There's not much new from a script perspective, but until we stop going to see them, Disney's probably going to keep making them. And think about all the Sour Patch Kids things, like this cereal that's delicious. Is it really good for me? Is it really beneficial? Probably not. But again, until I stop buying it, they're going to keep selling it. How often do we treat sin the same way in our lives? Or things that maybe aren't necessarily sinful, but lead us down a path towards sin. You see, sometimes we forget to stop and think about whether or not we should, and we focus more on whether or not we can. Paul says it this way in 1 Corinthians. He says, "All things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. And all things are lawful for me, but I will not be dominated by anything." And later in 1 Corinthians 10, he adds this, "All things are lawful, but not all things build up." Now in chapter 6, he's addressing sexual immorality, and in chapter 10, he's addressing an issue the Corinthians had with eating food that had been sacrificed to the Greek gods, and whether or not it was permissible. Here's the important part. The first part of each of those statements, the "all things are lawful for me" part, is in quotes, which tells us that these are statements that Paul was hearing from the people where they were justifying their behavior. They were focusing more on the "can I" question. And ultimately, they were trying to use Jesus' death and resurrection as some kind of a get-out-of-jail-free card. A way to say, because of what Jesus has done, I can do this. What they really needed to be asking themselves, though, was, should I? To which Paul answers, not everything is helpful, not everything builds up, and I will not be dominated by anything. You see, in this moment, I think it's safe to say that Paul was looking back to Jesus' teaching during the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. Not one iota of the law will go away." Jesus didn't come to die on a cross and rise again so that we could do whatever our hearts desire. He came to do something for us that we could never do on our own. And so, in closing, we go back to Paul's closing arguments, where he reminds us and says, "Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body." Today we're entering the season of Lent, and it's a time for us to take a step back and really focus on our lives, to thoughtfully and prayerfully reflect on those areas in our lives where maybe we're thinking about the wrong question. Maybe we're asking ourselves, can I, rather than should I? This season of Lent is a time to take a step back and ask, am I glorifying God in all of my thoughts, words, and deeds? And am I pointing to Jesus? It's a time for us to really think about what it meant for Jesus to endure the cross, to endure death and suffering and hell on our behalf. During this season of Lent, I hope you'll come along with me as I do that. Now, here's another question. Who needs so many Sour Patch things? Come back on Friday and I'm going to taste test all of it. And go into a sugar coma. Blessings on your Ash Wednesday. That's a little weird. That does not go well with coffee. Oh. Well, I finished it. Boo!